All right, welcome to the next segment in human impacts on the environment. And this time we are going to look at a really important concept, and that is biodiversity. And biodiversity is just talking about not just having lots of living things in an area, but lots of different kinds of living things in an area. There's many different definitions for biodiversity. What we will probably focus on mostly is this one, species diversity, the number of different species in the biosphere or in a given ecosystem, though ecosystem diversity is also a big deal, to have lots of different habitats, lots of different places for lots of different things to thrive. Genetic biodiversity is really important to, well, I just scribbled all across that, but to have lots of different genes within a bunch of organisms is really important. If all organisms are genetically identical, then if something's bad for one of them, it's bad for all of them. And you could have a species collapse, which could be extremely bad, not just for that species, but for the ecosystem in which it exists. Okay, so real quickly, you should understand about species status terms. If a species is threatened, okay, it means it is likely to become endangered if something's not done to protect it. An endangered species is a species that is believed to be in danger of extinction within either in its entire range or at least in a part of its range. And of course, extinct means it's too late. The species simply no longer exists. Okay. The extinction rate today, the rate at which we are losing species, the rate is kind of different depending on who you hear it from, but no matter who you hear it from, it's extraordinarily high, okay? It is pretty much universally accepted among biologists that we are currently undergoing a mass extinction. We have undergone mass extinctions in the past. Certainly when the dinosaurs went extinct, that was a result of a mass extinction episode, most likely caused by a meteor striking the Earth. What's causing the current mass extinction today? Looks like it's us. In a non-mass extinction type of time period, as we can tell by the fossil record, the normal extinction rate is between 10 and 100 species per year. And that's of all life forms, and tiny little bacteria, protists, plants, whatever. Okay? Our current extinction rate may be as high as 27,000 species per year. And I've heard different numbers from that higher, but that's what your textbook says, so that's what we're going to go with. The cause is almost certainly our ever-expanding human population, that it pushes into habitat where other living things still exist and removes the habitat, so there's no place for them to live. Okay. Now, why do we care? Why do we care if there's not lots of living things on the planet? Species of many kinds, particularly plants, but certainly also animals, provide us with unique resources that if we don't even know they're there, if they go extinct before we even know that they are there, we are losing things before we even know they existed. For example, things that can provide us, certainly, of course, with food, but products for industrial use to make our lives better, medicines that certainly come from plants and other organisms that may help save human lives. And we are exterminating species at such a high rate that we may wipe out these sources of new medicines, new fibers, new products, new substances before we ever get a chance to know about them. Certainly, some would argue that other species simply have value because of their own merit. They were put here on Earth, as were we, and they're beautiful to look at. Their complexity is interesting, so maybe just have value of its own. Also, if you have an ever-shrinking food web, eventually that food web collapses. And the collapse of an ecosystem is absolutely dangerous to not just the ecosystem and its living things, but to us, because we are also part of ecosystems. Okay, now what is causing this loss of biodiversity besides just basically us? What specific things do we do that harms biodiversity? Probably the greatest thing we do is we alter habitats. Habitat loss and habitat alteration, making it different, is probably the key loss reason we lose species. There's no room for them to live anymore, or the habitat is not suitable for them to live. Maybe we still have woods, but when we put roads all through the woods, then we're making it really not conducive to organisms living there anymore, even though there might still be trees. We'll talk a little more about that. Hunting species, fishing, overfishing, things like that. Poisoning the environment, pollution, poisoning organisms, and of course introducing foreign species into an environment that may outcompete the native species that are supposed to be there, and kind of turn what was a nice varied habitat into a monoculture. Monoculture means basically just one thing takes over, like kudzu or Phragmites, which is a reed that is kind of overrunning our native marsh plants and so on. Whoops, there we go. So habitat alteration, let's just talk a bit about that. Certainly natural habitats get destroyed when we develop land. We're going to put up a shopping center, we're going to put up a housing development or whatever. And of course, as those habitats disappear, the species that live within them disappear as well. Habitat fragmentation is what I was talking about just a bit earlier. When we split up ecosystems, habitats, so maybe we don't get rid of the whole thing, but we carve it up in such a way with roads and houses and whatnot that these little pockets, perhaps of woodlands, become isolated. And so these little pockets where to us, it's like, oh, well, look, there's nice woods over there, but it's this little island. And as organisms maybe try to make it into or out of the tiny island, they get run over by cars, that they are much more vulnerable than they might be had we left an entire area intact. This is a great overview of any suburban neighborhood, and you can see that we've got pockets of woods, but should an animal try to cross this road or cross over from this road, it's a dangerous world and for them. And organisms, and of course this little patch of woods can only support but so many organisms. Imagine this all used to be woods before, and we've claimed all of this for us. And well, you guys can have this little patch. And by the way, if anybody wants to get into that, they kind of have to cross over these roads in order to get there. Okay. This is a great example, box turtles. Box turtles are on the steep decline in our state and in other states because of this. They are so vulnerable to habitat fragmentation. Box turtles will attempt to move from one area of woodland to another for whatever reason. And of course, if they have to cross over this highly dangerous roadway, the likelihood that they make it intact across that roadway is not really great. Certainly people accidentally run over them. Some people think it's funny to run over them. It's horrifying to hear some of the stories that people who run wildlife areas around the state will tell of seeing people actually do that on purpose. So habitat fragmentation, even though we do have lots of woodland where box turtles could live, we have made these border areas extremely dangerous for them. Okay. Of course, there is also high demand still for some wildlife products, and these are animals that were driven to extinction because of hunting for them. The Carolina parakeet and the more famous passenger pigeon went extinct, and as did many other animals, so that feathers could be used for hats. The elephants are still hunted for their tusks, for the ivory and the tusks. Many rhinoceros horns are desirable because certain cultures believe them to be an aphrodisiac or use them in kind of potion making or whatever. And many organisms are still hunted or poached illegally on lands because people want feathers or horns or whatever for whatever dubious purposes. Okay. All right. That's it for that topic. We will get on with a specific type of pollution in our next topic. I hope you have a lovely time until I see you again. Take care.